Welcome to episode 8 of the Composer Happy Hour, presented by Whatever and Ever Amen. Thank you so much for spending some time with us. If you're listening to the audio-only version of the show, I want to remind you that the episode is also available as a video, which is really the best way to be a part of the conversation. You can find the video at www.buymeacoffee.com/whateverchoir. Again, that's buymeacoffee.com/whateverchoir. And if you are enjoying the show, that site is also the spot where you can show your support by buying us a beer. Your beer money contributions help to support future episodes of the podcast. Speaking of support, we have an incredible sponsor for today's episode, Four Fires Meadery. They are an absolutely amazing meadery located here in Toledo, but their meads are also available for shipping nationwide. I will be drinking some of their stuff during the episode today, and if you want your own bottle, and trust me, you do, you can visit them at www.4fmeadery.com. That's the number 4fmeadery.com. More about them later in the show. My guest for today is David Montoya. David is a composer based in Southern California, where he also teaches high school choir and leads a ukulele ensemble. I'm super excited to invite you to this conversation with David. As you'll hear, he has a strong connection to Whatever and Ever Amen, and he and I also share a bit of common musical lineage, if you will. He's a guy that I greatly admire and has written some really wonderful stuff for choir. Today, we discuss musical mentors, books, and the catalog of Steely Dan. If you haven't already, pour yourself a drink. My name is Brad Pearson. My guest today is David Montoya, and this is the Composer Happy Hour. David Montoya, welcome to the Composer Happy Hour. So happy to have you here.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, how are you tonight?
Doing really good.
Yeah,
it's not,
good.
Quite night over here on the West Coast, but
yeah, late afternoon. You're actually at happy hour time.
4:30ish.
Yeah, whereas I'm not so much. We've already had dinner and putting the baby to bed and all of that. Why don't you tell everybody what you're drinking today?
Oh, let's see. Okay, well, I mentioned to you I'm a non-alcoholic guy, so I never got into it. So I've got a mixture of Shasta Tiki Punch, a little bit of ice cream, and some pineapple juice mixed in.
Nice. Yeah, see, that's fancier than what a lot of us drink, even though there's booze in it. But looks good.
It's a sugar shock, I can tell you.
Sure. Well, I tell you, my drink tonight actually has a fair amount of sugar in it as well, and I'm really excited about it. I mentioned to you that we have a sponsor for the episode who were kind enough to give me this beverage. So our sponsor is Four Fires Meadery, and I'm going to get that right in on the camera. Four Fires Meadery, which is a meadery here in Toledo, Ohio, and they're kind of incredible. They make just absolutely delicious stuff. And what I'm drinking tonight is a cranbanero. And I'm going to read this because I want to make sure I get it right. It is a honey cranberry cherry wine with habanero peppers added. So it's a little bit spicy, very sweet, and it's 11% alcohol. So it's a little bit boozy and quite delicious. In fact, I was just over at their meadery on this past Friday and had some flight on their patio. It's incredible. And I will mention later in the episode, we'll do a kind of a promo for these guys, but they're shipping now all across the nation. So they're a local place, but anybody who happens to be listening, no matter where you are in the continental United States, can order some Four Fires mead, and it's quite delicious. So
now, see, I would try something like that. That sounds exciting. It's not that I'm against alcohol. I just never really got into drinking it. But sometimes these cool exotic flavors are something I like to try.
For sure. Well, here you go. Cheers.
Cheers to you.
All right. Yeah, mead is kind of become a bigger and bigger thing. It's kind of taking over a segment in the alcoholic beverage industry, and it's very.
I've never heard of mead or meadery.
Yeah, I mean, it's essentially distilled from honey, right? I mean, honey is the sugar that creates the alcohol. So meads tend to be very, very sweet. They drink a little bit like wine in the kind of amount of alcohol that they have. I said this one's 11%. I've got a couple from them that are around 14%. But they're really sweet. So you usually are not going to drink huge quantities
Mhm.
of mead at one time. But yeah, it's delicious, delicious stuff. You know, it's funny that you said that you never really got into alcohol, because I'm a bit of a connoisseur of spirits and beer and whatnot, but I did not start drinking until I was 21,
Mm.
which, when I tell people that, is generally a surprise, a surprise to them. For the same, it just never interested me prior to that, and now it interests me a lot. So there's
Uh-huh.
that. Dave, you're out in California.
Yes.
Are you? We were just talking to a guest who was originally from California on our last episode, Jennifer Jolly. Are you a sports fan?
I like basketball.
Hmm.
I don't have that much time to watch sports, so I
Yeah,
don't often, but basketball, Lakers are my team. And so when it
yeah,
starts getting around that time, I get very into it sometimes.
yeah, for sure. Well, Jen is a Dodgers fan, and we had some conversation about that because they seem to be on the rise while my Cubs are descending. And same with the Lakers right now. The Lakers are, uh, you know, obviously not in the finals, but have played a pretty decent season, whereas my Bulls are not very good at the moment. So, you know,
I'll say that I found Phil Jackson's mentorship for both teams, read all his books, and got very
yeah,
into and inspired by what he had to offer to the team ethic. And I brought that, I think, to my classrooms. I always had that in my mind. Yeah, he
yeah.
was amazing. And more than the game itself, I found the leadership that he offered to really be something that interested me.
Yeah. Well, I'm so glad you brought up reading, because you are, I know, an avid reader.
I read a lot.
You read quite a bit. You post about it occasionally online, and post what you've been reading. Give when you say you read a lot, can you give us an idea of what that means? How much do you read?
Well, considering all the other things that I have going on in my life, when I can find time to read, um, I consider it a little victory there for my own personal education and enjoyment. But I've got a good friend, a retired science teacher, recently retired from the school where I teach, La Habra High School. And Bruce would, he has no children. He and his wife live a life of books and going to coffee shops and stuff like this.
Yeah.
And he had mentioned that he was going to try and read 50 books in 1 year. And so I said, that's a pretty neat goal, but that's way beyond what I have
Hmm.
time for. So I got inspired. And about 3.5 years ago, I made a New Year's resolution. I said, okay, I'm going to do 3 books a month. They can be small books, they can be big, heavy books. I read the Bible cover to cover a few years ago, and that took 3 years to get through everything.
Sure.
And I wanted to read all of the world religion major books and see what they all had to say. So I made that a goal. But then I set about reading 3 books a month, and I kept to it. And so I thought it'd be fun to kind of, a video, not video, but uh, Facebook post it, a little diary of all the things that I read. And so I did. I did 3 books a month for the whole year. Next year came along, and I said I'm going to up that to 4 books a month, and I did that. And we're talking, it could be, a really thick 300-400 page book or more, or it could be an Archie double digest, as long as
Yeah.
I'm reading, 3 things that I feel like I've accomplished something and got something out of it. So I've been on 4 books for the last 2 years. I'm keeping that steady right now to do 4 books for the month. And I've started
Nice.
a little small book club with some other guys that I know, most of them musicians. We started reading a Ted Gioia book. If you don't know this book, Ted Gioia, what is it called? It has to do, it's like a music history book
Hmm.
from the very beginning of time to what the cavemen were probably doing
Hmm.
musically. Fascinating stuff, such as, when they go into the caves and they find those cave paintings of animals and such, they also have noticed that those paintings are in the places of the cave that is the most acoustically resonant.
Hmm.
So it leads them to think that maybe there were rituals going on in these parts of the caves before the hunt.
Yeah.
Maybe there were vocal rituals that were getting really loud and getting everyone, hyped up and ready to go out and do this communal thing that was going to help the whole community, stuff like that. So he takes you through a very different view of music history, all the way up to modern times right now with, um, as he mentions, devices, and selling devices has become more important than the music that they're being used
Sure.
to listen to that music on. And they'll give away free music as long as you're buying our device, that type of
Right.
thing, that kind of control over what the public in general gets to hear. It's a fascinating read.
Hmm. Yeah, it sounds like it. It's funny that you bring up early, back in caveman days. My master's thesis, which we're going to talk about, somehow we're going to get into this similar conversation, I think, several times during our conversation today. But my master's thesis had to do with just intonation and why it maybe is so efficient for people to sing and listen in a more just intonation than equal temperament. And I wrote about human evolution a little bit in my youthful pseudo-scientific way, the best that I could with the research that I had. But I was reading a lot about early people, and read a book by Stephen Miffin that was really, really good, called The Singing Neanderthals, that talked a lot about the early days of people and how we developed language, and how musical it must have been as we, and that maybe even before any words, that we had a kind of musical proto language, right? That there was singing taking place before language. So it's interesting that you brought that up. I'm going to have to get my hands on the book.
Well, we've got, and I'll send you the title of that. I can get it for you. It's on my shelf right there, but I'm not remembering the title. That was many
Yeah,
books ago.
yeah,
So yeah, to finish the last conversation, I try and do about 40 books, 50 books a year now, and that's become regular for the last 3 or 4 years. It's a lot of
yeah.
fun.
That's great. Now, do you track them on? Do you use Goodreads to track them, or
I do
something
use
else?
Goodreads. I'm on there too.
I thought you were. It's funny. I got I'm on Goodreads, and I hadn't used it for a while, and you get the emails at the beginning of the year, or maybe at the end of the previous year, that are like, track your reading, set your reading goal for 2021. And so I set a goal that I knew that if I was only counting books that I was reading for myself, that I could never achieve. And I set a goal for 100 books. And that seems outrageous until you realize that I am logging all the books that I read to my son. Uh, so, some of which are 10 pages, one sentence per page. But I wanted to track how many different books I had read to him over the course of the year. So
That counts.
yeah, I'm going to make my 100-book goal. It's I'm cheating a little bit, I think, but we'll get there. Yeah. You like, you seem to be more of an analog kind of guy than a digital guy in some ways. And I mean that as a compliment and just something I've observed. But again, I know you like to read. I would guess, I could be wrong, but I would guess that you read physical copies of books almost exclusively, as opposed to digital copies of books. Am I right about that?
A few months ago, I tried my first audiobook. I said,
Uh-huh.
okay, I'm going to do this. I take walks every day. I try and walk for 30 minutes a day, sometimes with my wife. Sometimes I take the dog out, and sometimes it's just me listening to stuff. So I tried an audiobook. It took a while to get into the format. I like a physical copy in my hand. I like a
Yeah.
highlighter. I like a pencil in the margins, and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So yeah, I'm more happy with the book in my hand, but it turned out to be okay. I mean, I listened to Frederick Douglass, and by the time I was done with it, it was like My Bondage, My Freedom. By the time I was done with it, I was just, floored by what was in there and hearing
Yeah.
some random man's voice reading it, but it was great. So I've listened to
Yeah.
a couple of audiobooks, but in general, I've got stacks of books over here.
Yeah. Well, if you need something to listen to on your walks, I heard there's this really great podcast that somebody's put out with.
I heard about that. Yeah.
I've been listening to podcasts on my walks. But I brought up this idea of you being a little more analog, because you also, correct me if I'm wrong, but you enjoy doing puzzles.
Yeah, I
right?
love puzzles. Yeah, we haven't done it in a few months. My middle son and I have this love for puzzles, and no one else in the house does. But this goes back to when I was a kid. My sister and I used to love puzzles. So jigsaw puzzles, it's got to be at least 1,000 pieces, or else it's not worth it. So
Yeah.
we did about 20 during the pandemic. We were racing with some other friends on Facebook to see who could do more puzzles. And my son just has a knack for seeing shapes and fitting things together and playing games, which we love doing around here too. So he's very good at seeing things that I don't see. So we sit down and do puzzles together, and we've got a stack there waiting for us, but we haven't done one in a couple of months.
Yeah, it's funny because I mentioned I listen to podcasts when my son and I take our walks around the neighborhood, and I'm currently finally getting to finish a podcast called The Bog House, that is from actually the first guest on this show, Melissa Dunphy. And it's fascinating. Actually, you'd really enjoy this podcast because it is not music related, but it talks about sort of early American history. Her and her husband, Matt, I'm going to do this very succinctly. Her and her husband, Matt, basically bought a really old building that comes from the very beginnings of our country, and they found a bunch of artifacts in privies when they were getting ready to remodel. And so this podcast is sort of all about this crazy adventure that they go on. She just said on the episode I was listening to today that she loves doing puzzles, but she's so happy that she has these artifacts that she's putting together, because what she hates about doing puzzles is that at the end you are left with nothing, because you just break the puzzle and put it back in the box. And so she's loving putting together these old kind of ceramic pots and plates, because you actually have something that you've created at the end that's a tangible thing. It made me laugh because I sort of enjoy puzzles in that I like starting them, and then I get about halfway done, and then I never finish. I couldn't tell you the last time I actually finished a puzzle. But
we start to race at the end, and start to hide the last piece from each other, stuff like that.
Sure.
Who gets to finish the thing?
Yeah. David, I want to let's backtrack a little bit, because I want people who don't know you or anything else about you. Let's start at the very beginning. Can you tell us when and where you were born?
Wow. Yeah. Okay. So I was born not far from where I now live, in West Covina, California, Southern California, at the Queen of the Valley Hospital in 1968.
Excellent.
It was the last day of 1968, which was a pretty turbulent time, I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was when I was born.
And what are your parents' names?
David is my dad, and Barbara is my mother. And they were also both born here in Southern California.
Oh, nice. And what did David and Barbara do when you were growing up?
My mother worked in a doctor's office right out of high school. It was an interesting time. I just listened to like an hour-long conversation that my wife had with my mom about her growing up and her, experiences in Southern California as a woman of color, etc. And my wife was doing a paper on it, so I went back and I listened to this recording. So just recently, hearing her and all the things she had to say, telling about her upbringing, and she was determined to get married with my father. She had met him during high school, and my my grandmother said, well, you got to work for a year after high school and you got to have your own car if you're going to get married. My dad went
Sure.
off to the service, stationed in Germany. He was 3 years older than her. So when he came back, she had a job working for this doctor and running the office. And she had her own car. So they got married as soon as he came back. So they got married very young. Oh, let's see. Her experiences, it was interesting. This is going to get into a couple of, maybe this takes it in a tangent a bit here, but you and I have two things at least in common, Brad, I think. And one of those things is that we are both language learners on Duolingo.
Yeah,
Yep, right. Spending a lot of time on there. You have spent a lot of time on
I
Duolingo.
have. Yeah.
And I'm like on an 82-day streak or something like that.
There you
So
go.
I'm learning Spanish and I'm learning Latin. And I saw that you've done all the major European languages, I think. And
A little bit. Mostly, French has been the one I've done the most of, and quite a bit of German and some Italian. So yeah.
Mhm. It's interesting. And the other thing that we have in common is that we both graduated from the same master's program.
Mm-hmm.
You, and it was in Southern California at Cal State Los Angeles,
Yeah.
where I did my undergrad. And then me when it was first established as a program at the University of Nevada, Reno.
Right.
Yeah, so I was in that first graduating class many 20 some years ago. And so I know we've got those things in common. But the language thing takes me to the reason I'm learning Spanish right now is that I've tried to learn Spanish several times. And as a Mexican American, I get asked a lot, why don't you speak Spanish? Why don't you speak Spanish? Um, third and fourth generation Mexican American is what I am. And this gets into the whole subject of my mother's upbringing, where she talks about the extreme prejudice that was going on back in the 60s in Southern California against
Mm-hmm.
Hispanics. They were punished for speaking Spanish. She grew up not speaking Spanish in school, and at home it was a lot less too, because although my grandparents spoke Spanish, they were also born here. So being that far removed from living in a different country that speaks a different language, it started to wind its way out of our normal usage.
Yeah.
Um, and I wish I spoke Spanish, and I've tried several times, but I've never needed to speak Spanish.
Sure.
So I've decided that it's important that I now learn to do it. And this app is not a commercial for the app, but boy, Duolingo is really helping me to get comfortable using the Spanish that I've gleaned over the years. And I expect to be somehow fluent in a couple of years, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. And so dad was in the service, mom was working in a doctor's office. Your dad, what did he do when he came back? Was he
When he came back, he was a factory worker in the aerospace industry. So he was
awesome?
doing fasteners and things that would go out for airplanes and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Hard work. It was hard, loud on the ears, sometimes backbreaking work. But he did it for so many years. I mean, he put my sister and I through college, put us through a very
Mm-hmm.
comfortable lifestyle. Um, he grew up poor himself from a very large family where the father left and they didn't have much. And so he was not going to, he saw something different in my mom's family, which was a smaller Mexican family, about, four siblings, and had enough to be comfortable. And he wanted that, and he wanted more, and he wanted education for his kids, and he worked hard and he saved. And I really, my hat's off to him for how much he did for me and my sister.
Yeah. Were they I mean they obviously weren't in musical careers, but were they musical? Did they play instruments or sing?
From what I understand, my father played the saxophone in the band, but in high school, but he moved so much that it was hard to get established doing much of extracurricular kind of lifestyle of a kid who's always there at the same school. My mother sang in choir. Years later, she sang in my first choir that I started teaching at the church. So she loves it. She's musical. She's um, not really gotten deep into it, but yeah, I don't know how I ended up so deep into the musical life,
Yeah.
because it certainly wasn't. It just wasn't a full part of my lifestyle and my family life. But my parents gave me every opportunity. So I was 9 years old when a traveling accordion salesman came to our house. Given our name was given to him by the kid down the street who was playing the accordion, and they would pass off 10 names and the guy would go around. Well, that's how I got my start. I loved it. I was
Is
very
that
musically
is
inclined.
that real? You got your start with from a traveling accordion salesman?
Absolutely true.
I mean, that sounds like you're making it up. I know you're not, but it sounds that way.
I mean, we played some recorder in school like everybody
Yeah.
else, and that kind of thing. But when this guy came around and he took out this little like 1.5 octave accordion and showed me play some things in my house, I was like, "Can I, Mom? Can I? I'd like to do the 10-week trial." And so and the place was all the way out in Arcadia, so they drove me out there for lessons every week,
Wow.
and I just loved it. After 10 weeks, I knew I was going to stick with it for a while. So they bought me this $1,000 accordion on payments, and I was playing the 2.5 octave big giant thing. And it was foundational for my understanding of how to read music and my understanding of the keyboard in the right
Yeah.
hand way, because the left hand was buttons. And I played for about 2 years before I finally gave it up. But I think all those fundamentals were set.
Yeah. Now I know you to also have a fondness for a variety of instruments. Do you currently own an accordion?
I do. you know, I hadn't played for years, and my parents finally sold it at a yard sale, and I wished I still had it. And then one came around in a thrift store, and I picked it up, and I said, "I'm taking this home." And the amazing thing was, I could still play it, and I could still remember those tunes that I learned as a kid.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, I'm gonna kind of veer off the path a little bit. Um, can you tell us what instruments do you own? How many instruments? How many can you rattle off? What do you have?
If you want me to really count them, I could say I've got, this harmonica and that harmonica and get real detailed. But I've got, at last count, I actually made a list a few months ago. I said, you know what, how many do I have? And
Yeah.
so I started counting. Some of them are very playable, of course, and excellent, fine instruments. And some of them are kind of fun to hang on the wall, as you can see some around here.
Yeah.
But I've got about 55 instruments or so, I think. I recently
Yeah.
gave some away. I've kind of come to the point in my career where I think, let's see, in 9 years I can retire from
Hmm.
public institution teaching and start teaching out of my house, mentoring out of my house and composing all the time. This
Yeah.
is I'm looking forward to this time when I have more time to focus on those kinds of things. And I almost feel like, gee, maybe I should start giving away some of the stuff I've collected. So as
Yeah.
my students are coming up and becoming teachers themselves, I'll say, do you want these? Why don't you take them? You can use them, or take this stack of books because they'll mean something to you on your shelf, or take this instrument, etc.
Yeah. Uh,
Guitar.
can you
Uh,
tell us what are some of the more unique things that you've got?
well, let's see if you can see right back there, those two ukuleles. That is a baritone ukulele, the yellow one, that belonged to my ukulele teacher, Bill Tapia. Bill was this amazing legend ukulele and guitar player who actually entertained the troops in World War I, the USO. And I met him I bought my first ukulele when my wife and I went to Hawaii for our honeymoon. And I saw him at a concert in Claremont, and I went up to him. She goes, "Why don't you go ask him if he gives lessons?" And I said, "Okay." And so I went, and I ended up starting up a relationship with him. He lived out in Westminster, He passed away at the age of 103.
Wow.
About, it's maybe been almost 10 years now. And so I would go to him and I'd take a, quick half hour lesson with him. He played with all the jazz greats. He played with, Charlie Parker and Billie Holiday and these folks, Hoagie Carmichael. And so he would sit there and write out a chart for me. And then we would sit there and we'd play, and I'd strum the chords and he'd improvise. And then he'd say, all right, just improvise and I'll play the chords, and it was that kind of thing. It was fantastic. That was his baritone ukulele that he didn't really play that much, but it's got his name on it. And so I bought it from him years ago. So that one's kind of special to me.
Yeah.
This one over here on the right is an Egyptian oud, which is probably way out of tune. And I've played on it a little bit. It's a fretless 10-string instrument that a former student brought back for me from Egypt. I told her, if you see any ouds out there, I'm interested in buying one. If you find a dealer's name for me, send me pictures and then I'll buy it. Well, she shows up in my classroom one day with this oud and she says, here, this is for all you've done for me. And I'm like, oh my goodness. So I was very thrilled at that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Several guitars, lots of ukuleles, lots of harmonicas.
Yeah.
Didgeridoo. You can see my didgeridoo up there. Stuff like that.
And so how do you get from an accordion from a traveling salesman to becoming, going into music education? What happens that's the trajectory?
That's a very good question, because I did not take up music again until I was in late high school.
Yeah.
So, my main job right now is I'm a choral director. I'm a choral guy. So I teach high school choirs. But I was never in high school choir. I was in the band, playing in the jazz band, where I started to take piano lessons and I started to learn how to play chords and off of chord charts. So about that time, I'd say senior year of high school, I started playing guitar with my uncle. And then I started taking piano lessons again, or for the first time, and really loving it. And so all that knowledge that I had built into me from early on the accordion started coming through. I get to graduate, and actually my path was, I was really thinking I was going to be joining the Catholic priesthood. This is where I was going. And so I took a retreat. I went and I talked to the priests in the diocese, and they were ready to sign me up, and I was ready to sign up. I went up to St. John's Seminary in Camarillo for a meet and greet weekend, and I thought I was ready. And my mom drove me home. We both cried all the way home, and I didn't know why. And they gave me some paperwork to fill out, and they said, when you're ready, send it in. And this was right after I had graduated high school, so I was 17. And I never filled it out. And I don't know why I never filled it out. It just, I guess I wasn't being called in that direction. So when I realized I wasn't going to do that, and I had already entered Cal State LA, I said, the only other thing I love is music. So I'm going to go sign up as a music major.
Wow.
And I did, and never looked back.
Yeah. And when you finished, what was the first gig that you had?
I was learning a whole lot during college, and I had a knack for it and a passion for it, because it was, all of a sudden I'm singing in a 4-part choir, singing, the Ingegneri Tenebrae Facte Sunt, which I absolutely adored, and singing in Latin in 4 parts for the first time in my life, and hearing all this harmony. I mean, I'd been singing in the church choir, but that was more of like a band. So we would do harmonies, but we weren't doing 4-part choral music. And it was a very enlightening, exciting experience for me. So I went to the teacher, Dr. Fowles, God rest his soul, and I said, I want to be a music major, and he says, okay. I said, I want to study composition, and he says, we don't have a composition major, so we'll put you down as a vocal major. Now, I don't understand what happened there exactly, because I know they had a composition major at Cal State LA, but they didn't have a vocal composition.
Mm.
And I think that's what he thought I was looking for, because he knew me through the choir.
Yeah.
So, and I didn't know any better. So I'm like, well, okay, sign me up. And we signed it. And he promptly retired right after that. Now, he was a sweetheart of a guy, and he taught me all about Gregorian chant. I learned so much from him about it, doing workshops and things after he retired. Sang in a choir that he had that was all Gregorian chant. We wore robes and everything and performed, and it was a lot of fun. And he was one of those teachers that kept up on me to see how I was doing as the years progressed.
Mm.
So I really appreciated him for that. Passed away a number of years ago. And I became a vocal major. So now I'm a vocal ed major because I'm so late in my own history that I feel like it's a little too late to say I'm going to go out and be a professional performer. So I'm fine. I'll go teach. That would be nice. I can be around music all the time. Somewhere along the line, my teachers started saying, you could really become an opera singer if you wanted to, because you've got the pipes, you're young enough, and if you want to go that direction, change your major to BM, Bachelor of Music. And I said, okay. So I did, and at least I would get to take more classes and learn more, and I was excited by that. So I did. Towards the end of all of that, and I'd already done my first recital, my junior recital, the school got a call saying, we need a replacement teacher in the middle of the year in February at this junior high teaching choral music and general music. Do you have anybody that could interview? And so my teacher, Dr. Tom Miyake, he gave them my name, and I went down and auditioned, and lo and behold, I got the job. But I didn't have a degree yet. I wasn't finished because I was a BM. Yeah. So I went back to the school. I said, this school wants to hire me in February, like, a month from now. And they said, we'll expedite your paperwork. They were great about it. They returned me to a BA from a BM because I had already finished the BA requirement. Yeah. They passed the paperwork, shoved it through, got me on an emergency credential, and away I went. I was now a choral director.
That's great. And
I thought I would...
Yeah, go ahead.
I thought I would do that for a while, and that would be a stepping stone to maybe opera singing, to maybe something else, But after 5.5 years of teaching junior high, I started teaching high school, and I said, I think I'm going to land here for a while. I'm going to stay here doing this. And I did.
And so how many years has it been?
It's been about 29 years.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, I can say firsthand that you do a great job in the classroom, because I did visit your school. Boy, I don't know how many years ago that would have been now, but
when you were teaching high school.
When I was teaching high school out in Las Vegas, we were doing must have been a Disneyland or Knott's Berry Farm trip and a heritage festival down in LA or Anaheim, and we swung by the school and my kids sang, and I don't remember. I think that maybe we came on a weird day, and I don't remember if your students sang for us or not. But I remember we visited the classroom, and it was great that you had us out. And yeah, so I've been to your classroom, which is a pretty cool thing.
Yeah.
Okay, friends, I want to take a minute to tell you about the sponsor for today's episode. Four Fires Meadery. First meadery in Toledo, they are making some absolutely incredible stuff. And the good news is that even if you can't drop in for a few glasses, you can have the mead shipped directly to your door. I am not sure I can imagine a more exciting package to open. Right now on their website, you can order things like Mangost, a mango pineapple honey wine with ghost peppers added. The ghost peppers might sound kind of intense, but the sweet and heat are amazingly well balanced. Or maybe a bottle of Little Pink Lawn Chair. This is their strawberry, raspberry, and lemon mead to give you a taste of pink lemonade in the summer year-round. I had a glass of this on their patio a couple of weeks ago, and, well, it's the perfect summer beverage. If you want to try some, visit them on the web at 4fmeadery.com and order a bottle today. They're shipping nationwide, and you don't want to miss out. Again, that is the number 4fmeadery.com to order your bottle today. I also hope you will show them some support on social media at Four Fires Meadery on Instagram. It's a great follow. Buy some mead, you won't regret it. And now, back to the conversation. All right. So, Dave, we were just talking about you being a classroom teacher and that you'd been teaching for quite a long time, high school choir. When did the first composition happen? I mean, I know that there were probably many compositions happening all the time, writing music, but what was the first thing that like got published or was a performance by a group that wasn't yours?
Well, this goes back to my accordion days as far as my desire to put notes on the page.
Yeah.
Or at least words and chord symbols, when I was playing guitar. It always seemed to be something that drew me. So when I got to college and I was really becoming good at reading music, because that's what I was studying and taking music theory and stuff like this, we went as a group from the college. We went out to Phoenix for, I think it was ACDA National. It might have been the regional that year. In Phoenix, we went and I heard so many things that just set me on fire. I had never heard music like that before. Among those groups was the Tapiola Choir, kids choir from Finland, which I still have that CD and still love to this day. It was unbelievably good. They did this wonderful piece at the end where all these little Finnish kids started singing American folk music, and they took out the cowboy hats and fiddles, and they started fiddling and playing and singing this American folk music. It was unbelievable. The crowd went nuts.
Yeah.
But they're atonal music. They're really out there. Avant-garde stuff just amazed me. So I remember coming home, someone's dad picked us up, drove us home, and I was like taking out the staff paper in the back seat, and I was starting to write my first piece of choral music. And I was like, yeah, I got to start doing this. And so I did. That stayed with me all through college, where I wanted to write. I wanted to create. And I did, and I kept creating and experimenting, and I would ask friends, give me a favorite text and I'll write you an art song, that kind of. So I just thought I can get some practice. And so I did a lot of that. The very first published piece came along sometime after I was working with Don Brenniger, who taught us both at the Summer Masters program. And we were both at a workshop, Four Corners workshop at the Northern Arizona University. We were there that summer, and I showed him a piece I had been working on. It was a piece called Three Poems by St. John of the Cross. And so they were in like 16th century Spanish from Spain language. And so as I was working on these, I showed them to him, and he was like, this is very good, and I would love to perform this. And so I was very excited that was a possibility. He also helped me to get that published with Walton. He showed it to them and said, I'd like to see this in print. And one thing led to another, and it got published, and Don performed it in Pasadena. And I remember hearing the tenor solo. I wrote this beastly tenor solo in the middle of it that I would not even want to sing myself.
Yeah.
And I could hear the guy practicing it in the beautiful church in Pasadena, and I could hear it echoing through the hall before the concert. And I'm like, that's my music. Oh my gosh, somebody's singing it. It's actually going to happen. So that was the first time.
And that's gotten quite a few performances. I mean, people are still buying it, still singing that one. I think people might know you well for that piece.
Well, it was nice when I found it on a CD once. It was Louisiana State University a cappella choir.
Yeah.
And, we were at conference somewhere, and one of my friends said, "Hey, look, you know, your piece is on this CD." He did 2 of the movements out of the 3, and that was very exciting for me to see it was out there. I don't know if it's selling anymore. The piece that ended up selling a ton and lasted for a long time was my African processional, Jambo Rafiki Yangu. That piece went all over the world. It was very exciting for me. And now and then I'll Google it or YouTube it, and I'll see groups doing it from China and groups doing it from, you know, all the way up to the United States Air Force singing sergeants. There's a video of them singing it on the steps of the Capitol building. And I'm like, holy cow.
Yeah. That's super
so
cool. Now, because you were not a composition major in college, and that was maybe not, while because I know you enough to know that you were always probably writing things and creating, and that your first compositions weren't when you started composing per se, but because you maybe didn't have some of that formal training in college exactly the way you would have if you'd been a composition major, have you taken on any major kind of mentors or people who have helped guide some of your process as a composer post-college, later in life?
Oh, absolutely. And so here's my little story I like to tell. Eric Whitaker and I were sitting on a bus in Long Beach one day, and we were going to an ACDA student symposium. We both had a work that was going to be performed. He was, I think, at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. So they were down for the symposium, and I was at Cal State LA. And so we're both taking a piece that we had written to have it read by the convention and to present it at this group of ACDA student chapters. And from there, you know, Eric focused on composition and, you know, got his degrees in composition, and that was everything he was doing. For me, I went the education route, and I was ensconced in teaching and composing when I could. So our 2 trajectories kind of, you know, his shot up and mine went nice and slow but steady, you know.
Yeah.
And it's still going that way because I'm still teaching and got other responsibilities and all, you know, but composition has been a main focus of my music making ever since I was that 9-year-old kid trying to create stuff on my accordion. My 2 mentors, I've got 2. One is W.A. Matthew, who I know you're very familiar with. And I believe you've talked with him, haven't you? You had some conversations with him on the phone.
Yeah.
Master teacher, wonderful influence in my life, and my music is what it is because of him. He really took me to the next levels, and because I didn't have that formal training through an institution, I look at it this way. You know, I've been studying with him. I'm still studying with him for over 20 years, and it's had a profound effect on what I do. A lot of the basics that you might get in an institutional program, you have to pursue it yourself, because if you don't, you're not really going to get it out of a program. I've mentored a lot of composers now who come to me and say, teach me how to write better vocal music, because we do instrumental and we don't quite know the voice as well. Can you show me some tricks and tips? And I enjoy doing that very much. And so we end up talking about their compositional degree programs, whether it's undergrad or grad programs. And I say, well, how much counterpoint do they give you in that class, in that program? Well, we didn't have to take any counterpoint classes, they'll say. And it boggles my mind. The understanding of harmony and how harmony really works, which is what I've learned from W.A. Matthew, who we call Alaudin. He goes by the name Alaudin. So I've learned so much about harmony and how harmony works through him. But it's such an in-depth study. You know the book Harmonic Experience. You've been in there. That book is a lifelong, you know, harmony Bible that's meant to be studied over a long time. And And I've studied it since it was first published. I had one of the first copies that came through. I was learning out of the manuscript copy from Don Brenniger, who got it from Aladdin.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's not, if you go, from what I've heard, into a composition program now, you're doing a degree program, you're going to start churning out works. You're going to get a lot of experience, hopefully get to hear your pieces performed over the years that you're there. But there's not necessarily a lot of going back to study counterpoint. Maybe you had one semester of it. Maybe you had a year of it if you were lucky in undergrad. Doesn't seem to be the focus. So with Alaudin and with my second mentor, George Heusenstam, I'll talk about him in a minute. I've studied counterpoint over the years a lot. I've studied figured bass. I'm studying it now, in fact, where you learn these bases. I've got a copy of a book by Paul Vidal of like 179 figured bases to solve. If you solve them all properly, and you learn them and you memorize them and you transpose them to different keys, you'll basically be learning all the different moves, four-part models in tonal harmony that exist. And this is what they were teaching at the Paris Conservatory. Fantastic book. Not that you got to learn them all. I've learned only, 3 or 4 of them right now. But spending time with them has been such a wonderful experience. And I know that connects me to this lineage of harmonic understanding that a lot of composers nowadays don't have, from what I've experienced. From those I've talked to, and I've looked at their music, and they've asked me, can you take a look at this? And I'll give them my opinions from my experience. So studying figure bass, studying counterpoint, studying harmony, studying orchestration, these are kind of the hallmarks of being a composer in my mind. And that seems to be changing. And that seems to be less important even in degree programs. So I feel like I've come by my knowledge very honestly over years and years of deep study into these things, while at the same time creating my own works. George and Alaudin are both wonderful examples of this, because Alaudin got his degree from the University of Chicago, his BA or BM, and then after that it was all practical experience. It was all what he was doing to push ahead to learn. He didn't go to other degree programs, and he writes this amazing book and 3 others, and one that's on the way, in fact. He was playing in the Stan Kenton band, playing third trumpet and writing arrangements for the Stan Kenton band, right? That kind of stuff. George did not get a degree at all. George was 35 years old. He was a newspaper man working for the Herald Examiner in Los Angeles. And he tells his wife, I think I want to be a composer. Well, the newspapers went on strike, and he found a lot of time to get into the Walter Piston books and the Kent Kennon orchestration books and counterpoint books. And he studied and studied and studied, and he became a composer. Very experimental, but also very understanding of counterpoint and harmony. Lots of atonal music, but lots of tonal music too. I now have his entire catalog. He's given it to me to take care of for him. So I've got his 90 works for orchestras and instrumental groups and choruses, and it's unbelievable because they're all handwritten. So he wrote the Norton Manual of Music Notation for the Norton Company, which they picked it up and they wanted to use it in all the colleges. So many people know this book. He wrote a couple of harmony books for Hal Leonard. And he has a counterpoint book that I've learned from, that he used to use as a professor at Northridge, Cal State Northridge, and Cal State LA, and Cal State Dominguez Hills. But he never finished the last chapter. Chapter 12, writing 3-part fugue. He started it, but he never actually finished writing the book. And I don't know if I'm going to get that last chapter out of him. Now, I took composition lessons from George when I was at Cal State LA. I would go drive out to his house, and he turned me on to what music theory was all about. And he was my second-year theory teacher. And then we lost touch after I graduated. About 20 years later, he finds me on Facebook and he says, I was just looking for you, thinking about you, seeing how you were doing. I'm publishing my harmony books with Hal Leonard. And I said, well, we must get together for lunch. And since then, we've become fast friends. And for the last 10 years, he's been my teacher and mentor. And he's a wonderful guy. Never got a degree in composition, but he had a worldwide reputation. And the works that he wrote are phenomenal. And so I started a website for him. It's georgehoisenstom.com, and put a lot of his works on there for people to hear. And you know, people can contact there if they want any of the scores. And I wanted to preserve his legacy because he's going to be 95 now. You know, Alaudin is almost 85, I think 84 this year. So I want to do all I can to preserve what they've done while they were here, you know.
For sure. Yeah, Alaudin, you mentioned that I'd talked to them just once. We had a lengthy conversation because I interviewed him as part of my master's thesis. So actually our conversation, the transcription, was the addendum to my thesis, and he is amazing in many ways. And you mentioned the harmonic experience, which actually my laptop is sitting on top of right now, because it's kind of with all my music stuff. That's where I keep the recording things, and it is always close by.
It supports us in many ways.
Indeed. I will say, for anybody listening who does not know his books, W.A. Matthews' books, I can honestly say that they were life-changing. The harmonic experience, certainly in the way that I approach conducting and singing and understanding choral music and music in general. But the other books, right? The Musical Life, the listening book, Bridge of Waves, in the way that I think and talk about music and people. I mean, it's much bigger than music. And I will say I have one voicemail on my phone that is saved, and it's from Alaudin, because it meant so much to me at the time, that it's the only voicemail I've ever saved, and it's been through several phones, and it's there, and the account I've always got it. Yeah, people should check out his stuff.
He's got a forthcoming book that he's writing right now. So
I'm very, very excited to hear that.
Yeah, it's similar to those other three. It's essays about music, which he's so eloquent when he writes these. I keep several copies over there on my piano and give them away as gifts all the time. Harmonic Experience is the big, magnum opus. Yeah. But these smaller books are wonderful, wonderful reads.
I have also given them away as gifts to former students on several occasions.
Yeah. Sometime in the process of us working together, when I started taking lessons with Alaudin, it was I started to offer my services on Finale, and I said, "Would you like me to? Do you have anything you'd like me to set for you?" Well, his music like his piano music, can be insanely complicated.
Yeah.
But essentially, I used to barter lesson time for Finale time. And we eventually came to an understanding. He said, look, I've got so much music and I'm going to have so much more as the years go by. So I'll just teach you for free whenever you want. And you be my my engraver for life whenever I need you. That's a great deal.
Yeah, good. Yeah. Well, speaking now, I want to get back more into your music. And I want to talk about, I told you beforehand, there were a couple of pieces of yours that I specifically want to talk about, and obviously because they're near and dear to my heart. So I want to talk a little bit first about songs of fatherhood. And
because you're a father now too.
I am a father now. And
have you listened to them since you became a father?
I have not sat and listened to them all the way through since I've become a father, but I think about them quite often.
Mm-hmm.
Because whenever I think about Whatever and Ever Amen as a project, as a thing that exists, and this podcast, for those of you who may not remember, is sponsored by Whatever and Ever Amen. Whatever and Ever Amen is my sort of professional vocal project, we'll call it. And we were fortunate enough to premiere this wonderful work of yours called Songs of Fatherhood. And it is something that I am so proud to be a part of, because it was just it came at the right time for me with the right people. And it was, I thought, a really good performance, and we got a great recording of it. And it's a piece that has meant a lot to me. So I think about it often, and I have been meaning to carve out some time to just sit and listen again. But of course, with a 1-year-old, finding time to sit and do anything is hard to come by. But why don't you tell folks a little bit about the genesis of the piece, and how it came to be?
And this is one of my pieces. I love all my pieces, but this is a near and dear to my heart one also. I felt it was me writing about something that I had plenty of experience with at that time. This was, is it almost 10 years now? When did we do that?
I think 2013 or 2014.
Because the original piece, let's remember that you asked me to write a piece for your doctoral recital.
Yeah, so I think that would have been in 2012, and then Songs of Fatherhood would have come in 2013, if I'm remembering correctly.
And I was at a point in my composition where I was tired of writing 3 to 5 minute pieces, and I felt I needed to do something more substantial. As a choral person, we often write 3 to 5 minute pieces, and so I wanted something else. And when you asked me to write the piece, I was very excited. And so I started searching through the books of poet Bill Wallace, my friend from Los Angeles, who had recently performed a bunch of my pieces at his church, because Bill Bellin had decided to do, he was at the Unitarian Church in Los Angeles and decided he wanted to do a day of my music. So I was very excited by that. And Bill Wallace, literature teacher at LA Valley College, also had been an opera singer in Germany when he was younger. He was singing in the choirs, so he got familiar with my music there, sent me a stack of books of his and said, maybe you would consider setting some of my poetry to music. And so I was, at the same time you asked me to write a piece. So those two things converged, and I found the piece Asher's Moment. It was the moment of his son's birth that he was describing in beautiful detail, wonderful, wonderful imagery. And that he had written just after the birth had happened. He next day maybe sat down with paper and tried to describe the experience of becoming a father that way. And that piece moved me, and my kids were still pretty young. So I was like, I'm going to write this. And I did, and you performed it. And at some point, Bill and I started talking, and I said, what do you think about making a set of songs? And maybe Brad would perform those with his group. And so we all kind of agreed that that's what we were going to do. And I told you that I'd be writing a set of 3 songs, one based on birth, one on adolescence, and then another one that would be the letting go of your children eventually. And you said, yes, we'll do it. We'll put a concert together and we'll make it happen.
Yeah, I was foaming at the mouth. I was so excited because, frankly, when I asked you to contribute the first piece, I think I basically said, I have nothing to offer you except my gratitude and a performance, but would you consider writing something? Because I was a grad student with no money, but wanting to do something exciting, right? Wanting to do some new music. And so We sang, and it was an okay, I think, first performance. But when you came back and said, "Hey, there's going to be some more music, would you do it?" I mean, I was elated and was thrilled with that. So you offered some more pieces.
So I got the two pieces. I found more poems in Bill's books. And I told Bill, what we're missing here is adolescence. The set, it doesn't feel quite right. Do you have any poems about adolescence? And he said, well, let me see. And if I can't find one in my books, I'll write you one. Sure enough, he wrote one. And I called you, or I emailed you, and I said, so Brad, I know you have a rehearsal schedule already and you're doing 3 of these pieces. Can you add a 4th? And you said, we'll make it happen. Always the optimist, and always available. I really appreciated that. And so I wrote the piece and got it to you, and it was not an easy piece.
Hmm.
But then I looked at it, and I was actually showing the set to my mother. And I said I was thinking of adding a 5th to this set. And so she goes, and I go, but I thought it might be too morbid. It's the father passing away. And she goes, that's not morbid at all. That's the life cycle. That's the perfect way to end the set. And I said, oh my gosh, can I dare call Brad again? And I did. And I said, Brad, would you be able to fit in a 5th piece if it was kind of hymn-like, not
Yeah.
terribly difficult? And you said, absolutely, we'll make it happen. And I called Bill and I said, Bill, I need a hymn-like text for the passing on of the father and the passing of the torch to the son, who is now the father. And Bill said, I'll get right on it. And he wrote that last movement, and it's just a beautiful way to end up the set. And there you have it. We had the piece. Bill and I flew up to hear you guys perform it and record it, and it was just a joy.
It really was. It meant so much to me that you and Bill were able to be there, and um, both of you spoke before the performance a little bit to the audience, which meant a lot to me. And I think the performance was really well received. I mean, people seemed to really be moved by uh, what we did, and obviously that is so much a credit to wonderful poetry and an incredible setting of that poetry. Um, and we were humbled and honored to perform it. And then we were fortunate enough, of course, to go back and get a good, solid, recording, not a live recording, but a real recording. And that my selfish shameless plug is that is available for streaming and or purchase on Spotify and Apple Music and anywhere else you can find your music. But one we're really really proud of. There are some really clever and wonderful things in that set of songs. Can you talk about in the last movement? There are a couple of things in the very last movement that I think people will really enjoy, and one is maybe quoting some other music, and then you have a funny thing you do with the words at one point. And you can maybe tell people about that. I'm sure, I hope you know what I'm talking about in both of those instances.
Yeah, absolutely. The first one, I knew I wanted to put a J.S. Bach quote in there somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't know exactly how to do that. I had heard some guitar pieces that quoted Bach that I loved. And of course, for me, the end all be all of musical composition happens to begin and end with Bach. And some would disagree, but for me, he's been the most influential composer in my life. So I wanted to quote him in this larger piece that I was writing, which ended up about maybe 20 minutes long, this set, 15 to 20 minutes. And so I was listening to some Bach cantatas. There's a group is it the, what was their name? The Trinity Wall Street Choir. Do you know this group?
I don't think so.
I think it's the Trinity Wall Street Choir. I think that was their name. And they did the Bach motets. Exquisite recordings of these pieces, just unbelievably good. The tuning is amazing. And I was listening to them and I was following the scores and I was, as we nerdy music types do. And so I was looking at the text, and the text of one of them, I forget which motet it is, but the text said, "As a father cares for his little child." And I said, "There it is. There's the quote." So
Mm-hmm.
I took that and I used it and I sewed it into the middle of that last movement, the fifth
Mm-hmm.
movement. And I think it worked out well. In fact, one point, if for a bar and a half or so, it's like exact quote of four part
Mm.
out of Bach. Other ones kind of weave it in and out here and there. Um, I try to explain to my students, this is not plagiarism. This is honoring.
Yeah.
This is showing an homage to somebody that means a lot to you. And anyone who is well versed in music is going to recognize that as Bach's music, not mine. So there was that one. At the end, I'm trying to remember the exact text, but Bill says he worked it into the poem, and I didn't hear it until later.
Yeah.
After it was written and you performed it, it's talking about the the photograph that's left of the father, and there's this click sound in the text that it's a ch
Yeah.
sound.
It's the word is catch.
Catch, yeah, like
Mm-hmm.
they caught the image of the father on this photograph that allows you to remember him. And right when it's the you know that was the clicking of the camera.
Yeah.
And I honestly didn't hear that until after you performed it. And I was
Yeah.
like, son of a gun. And I asked Bill about it, and he said, yeah, I put that in there.
Well, and I don't think we didn't know at the live performance either. I don't think we'd caught it. And then I think we must have, you and I, prior to the recording session, had talked, and you said, and you knew you caught this. And I went, yeah, I caught that. But then I same thing. I said it to the singers. I said, oh, and you guys, of course, all knew you caught this, right? And they were all, they, was one of those moments. But it is,
It might have been because I took it to my students, and I would always workshop pieces like that with my chamber singers.
yeah,
They were very wonderful about it because I could play it for them, sing it through, teach them a little bit, and then if I needed to change things and I saw that things didn't work, I'd go back to my piano and fix it and work it and bring it back to them a new draft. I must have heard it there and then told you afterwards that I had found that, because I certainly didn't think of it when I was composing it.
yeah. One of the things that I really like about the set is that there are several solos kind of littered throughout, and there's in particular a duet with two tenors that's kind of resolved at the end of the piece, and um, really set in a really singable. All of it's very singer friendly, but the solos in there are I think in the first movement there's maybe a soprano solo and a tenor solo, uh, but pretty short. Nice ways to feature singers. And in fact, the first movement I think is a really easy standalone movement. If somebody wasn't quite ready to commit to all five, that first movement would be a great one to pull out and do.
Little
Um, yeah, correct. Yeah. Now you have another spot in the piece that I wanted to talk about, where there are some very, very difficult metrical choices that you've made.
Yeah.
And there are two different meters happening at one time. And I'm wondering if you could tell us about that and how that came to be.
There was this idea of that was at the end of the third movement, and there's this idea of dancing and being joyful and happy with your son. And I was looking for ways to be creative and to demonstrate that and to do a repeated type of ostinato pattern. I was able to put them together, and somehow I was able to do I think it was a pattern of 8 beats that repeated 9 times, and I had to make finale shove over the bar lines because I had some of them in 4/2 time and some of them in nine. I don't even remember off the top of
Yeah.
my head. I'll look at the score again. But I was tickled when I found out that I could make them all arrive at the same place at the same time after so many repetitions. So it became this kind of cyclic type of thing that ended up in the same place, and it
You
sounded like dancing.
it does, and it is easy, the two parts individually, right? So if you have the tenor and basses just singing together, that kind of gets into a groove and you go, oh yeah, this, no problem, we got this. And then you have the sopranos and altos singing together and kind of gets into a groove and no problem, we got this. And then you put the parts together, and it was a real challenge for us. And I remember early in the process, before I had seen this piece, we were emailing back and forth, and you sent me a real funny, cryptic email. And I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was something like, something like, and I have a question for you. When does 4 + 4 = 9, or something like that? And it made no sense to me at all. It made me laugh, but I didn't know what you were talking about. And then of course I got the piece, and it made perfect sense. But it does evoke a lot of dance. And I think that was one of the, we had 3 rehearsals, I think, by the way, before we did this concert. And
Mm.
that section was probably what we spent the most dedicated time to, because it was a challenge.
Wow.
And some of the singers, I think, were real frustrated at first because it was hard. And I won't say this is true of all singers, but sometimes singers like things that just sing easily the first time, and when they have to work, they can get frustrated if it doesn't come together right away. And so some of my singers, I think, were feeling a little bit overwhelmed by that section. But I know that those same singers, once we got things in performance order and were ready to go, that was probably the part that they liked the most, because it is different. It's unique. It's interesting, and challenging rhythms are not something singers always get.
And there's a very challenging rhythms, not even in that, because that's you get into a groove and it goes. And I would often think that I don't know how he's going to conduct this. I thought to myself, but as a conductor, I thought to myself, it's none of my business. He can do whatever he's got to do. This is what the music is supposed to sound like. And you did it brilliantly, I got to say. But the really difficult rhythms were at the beginning, all the really fast stuff running through, where you have the long, slow, sustained sounds of the sopranos and altos over that real fast thing going on in the tenors and the basses, all that dancing stuff.
Yeah.
But that you did it brilliantly. Your singers did it brilliantly. I couldn't believe how good it sounded after so few rehearsals.
It came together really well, and we were again just very honored to be a part of it. And it is still one of the things that I'm most proud of as a performance, as a recording, as a project.
Thank you.
Feeling like it was collaborative, because we talked through a couple of the rehearsals, and I know that there was a spot. I don't remember if it was in the first or second movement, but there was a spot where the harmony gets built up maybe in fifths, kind of stacked fifths, and the bass, baritone, and tenors in your original draft all entered in one spot. And I said, we're not getting this, second, fifth, or whatever it was. And we talked about that, and you kind of shifted that entrance just a little bit, and that meant a lot to me, because we were, again, it felt like we were collaborating through this process. And I know that Bill was involved in collaborating early in the process, right? You said I need more text to do this, and so it kind of was evolving over time. And then at the performance, and people can see this on the Whatever and Ever Amen website as well. We actually had some artwork done to accompany the pieces, and that was an artist that I met through a friend named Lorado, who she did different unique drawings for each one. And so our program that day was a 11 by 17 with all the text and these drawings on it.
Yeah,
And it
that
was
was a
just,
wonderful thing.
yeah, it felt like a really unique and fun collaborative thing. So I very much to this day, I'm still so proud of that performance. And I so appreciate you gifting us with that.
And one last comment about that piece is the fourth movement that was the double tenor solo. That duet between the dad and the son. Um, I don't know if it came off that well in live performance, but the recording is brilliant, and the recording is exactly as it's supposed to sound, because the choir is doing these Indian syllables in the background, the sa re gas, and I don't know if that was tough on the sopranos to stay up there that long, but they did it brilliantly and so beautifully in tune. And the way you can hear every word and every note of those that tenor duet, it's just I love listening to that movement because you captured it so brilliantly.
Well, thank you. So, for everybody who's listening, who is obviously now just rushing to go and find this piece to program with their choirs, they
Please.
can find it on musicspoke.com, right?
Yes.
And purchase it. I think all the individual movements are available for sale by themselves, or they can buy the whole thing. And you can hear what we think is a pretty nice recording up on Spotify. It's on the whateverchoir.org website, and hopefully people will listen. So another piece that I was so fortunate to get from you and be able to prepare with singers is called Peace is Every Step. And I'm hoping you could tell us a little bit about that piece and where that one sort of came from.
Yeah, let's see. Pieces Every Step is maybe more of a meditation than a concert work, I think. I was asked to write a piece for the Choral Arts Initiative. Brandon Elliott in Orange County does amazing, phenomenal work with his singers and with a lot of new composers, commissioning composers all the time. And they were having their 5-year anniversary. And one of the singers, who was a good friend of mine, he said, Brandon said, I've got 4 composers already. We need a fifth. And my friend Lorraine, who was in the group, she said, oh, you got to ask David Montoya. So he did, and I was terribly excited to be able to write for that high caliber group. And I told him, okay, so I think I'm going to be writing a piece based on a Catholic prayer that my mother is close to, and I think I'll be writing it for her birthday, her 70th birthday. I've never written her anything, so I think I'll do that. And I started to work on it, and Brandon liked the idea, and he said, that's going to be great. It was all about light. It was the concert theme was all about light. And so I set to working on it. But somewhere along the line, I got onto this Thich Nhat Hanh poem. I had just written a larger work for harp and choir and baritone solo called Our True Heritage, based on a Thich Nhat Hanh poem. And I was excited about writing for the harp, which that was the first time I had done it. And I started to work on this text, this Piece is Every Step. And so at some point, we're getting near the deadline when the composition is due. And I went to Brandon and I said, well, I promised you an a cappella Catholic prayer piece, and I think I've got an accompanied by harp, a Buddhist 4-part piece instead of an 8-part piece. And so they had already had plans. And so he said, well, I think we wanted the original piece. And so I said, okay. He goes, why don't you finish because Pieces Every Step was coming along faster than the piece that I was supposed to be finishing for Brandon.
Hmm.
So he says, why don't you finish them both, send them both to us, and we'll pick one to do for the premiere. And I said, okay. Agreed to that, and I sent him both. Well, he ended up choosing Light of Mary. So Pieces Every Step didn't get its performance at the time. And I was a little disappointed because I was excited, and that was the one that I had really been working hard on. But Light of Mary came out quite well, I thought, and I was very excited by that one too. And I was excited to be able to give my mother a premiere by a top-notch group that she could go and attend and
Hmm.
sit and watch and listen to. And she was very moved, very thankful for it all. And we got a great recording of Light of Mary. So I think that's when I sent you Pieces Every Step, and I said, "What do you think you can get this one going?" And you did, and it's a tricky piece. It's in 7/4, I think, and the drum beat just continues steady underneath it the whole time, very softly, while the harp and the singers kind of come in and out over this meditative text. And I put in the notes on the score that it would maybe be a good idea to end the first half of a concert with that piece and don't have any applause at the end. Just let people file out after it's over and take a little break, because it's, it's so calm and meditative. I think it's a tricky piece, but I think it's so meditative that applause would just kind of break the mood at the end.
Mm.
Yeah.
It's a lovely piece. You mentioned that you were with Our True Heritage, and then going into this piece kind of early in your process, writing for harp. That Our True Heritage was the first time you'd written for harp. Well, I had not conducted harp before, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's tough when you're talking, working with an instrument that you don't have the language for. I mean, it's a hard enough, I think, as a choral director conducting any instrument that you don't play, um, to sometimes find the language to use, or how to convey your thoughts. A quick digression here. When I was in my undergrad uh, at UNLV, somehow I never took any instrumental methods course.
Your undergrad.
So so I never ever ever have played any brass, woodwind, string instrument of any kind. And I don't know of any undergraduate program where that happens. I'm sure it isn't still that way at UNLV. I'm not even sure that it was that way at the time, or if I somehow squeaked through without doing it. But so I just don't have any facility for any of these other instruments. But harp was the same way, and so there's symbols in the harp writing that I didn't fully understand what they meant. And was our harpist Nancy was really kind and wonderful, and helped me through some of that process. But harp is a tricky thing. What brought you to the harp for Our True Heritage, and what was it about that you wanted to use again?
You know, uh, I was commissioned to write a piece for the Contra Costa Chorale in the Bay Area. They were having their 50th anniversary, and they wanted to hire two composers. We submit samples, and then they choose a composer. Well, they picked two of us, and they were going to be pairing things up with maybe a Haydn Lord Nelson mass, or so they had an orchestra, and they were going to have me write an orchestra piece. Didn't work out to where I had the time to get it all going. And at some point they said, I tell you what, why don't we put your piece in spring and we'll do the other composer in the fall with the orchestra? And I said, okay. And they said, but we're not going to have the orchestra anymore. And I said, okay, I understand. That's okay. So I'm sitting at my son's orchestra concert. They both played at Diamond Bar High School in the orchestra there. And this is the kind of high school that is performing the first movement of Mahler's Second Symphony uh, at a high school. And the conductor there's two harps in this. So the conductor had both harps on either side of the conductor's podium, not in the back where you usually see them. So I'm sitting there listening to Mahler, which I said earlier that Bach is my guy. Mahler is my second guy. If you're going to get into romantic orchestrations and colorings and themes, he's it for me. And I've loved him since college. And so I'm listening to the Second Symphony, and I'm seeing how simply Mahler used the harp in that movement. I mean, simple, bum, 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 just simple. And I'm thinking, why are there two harps there? It doesn't even need to be two harps, but they're right there in front of my face. And so I'm like, I should try and write for harp. Maybe I can write this piece that was supposed to be an orchestra piece. So I write a piece for harp instead. And I made a bunch of phone calls, including to the conductor, and we got an agreement that I could pick a harpist. I knew of one, a friend of a friend, who would teach me about the harp. And I borrowed one of those harps from the high school for the summer, and the teacher's like, "Yeah, go ahead, take it home." And so I did. I took this big giant concert harp home in my studio, and there's a picture on my Instagram of me sitting with it, leaning my head against it, and so I set about learning how to write for that instrument. Now I play guitar, so I know about plucking strings and harmonics and different kinds of things. It's of course a totally different beast, but it wasn't absolutely foreign to me. I was able to pick it up pretty okay. And anything I would write, I would send it to the gal and she would play through it. And she actually drove up to the Bay Area to premiere it with us. In two concerts that we did up there, and it was great.
Yeah. Well, I really enjoyed Pieces Every Step. You're right. It is a contemplative, introspective kind of feeling piece, but it is challenging for singers without being difficult. It is very subtle, but very, very beautiful. And I do think that it was very well received by our audience. And we did give them some instruction about it being, leaving time at the end to kind of sit with your thoughts, to sit with the music at the end. And I thought that went quite well. So it was another piece that I felt, it was sort of an embarrassment of riches. Felt so pleased to have been kind of gifted the opportunity to perform this piece. So, people should go and find that and program it, because it's a great tune.
And if all goes well, I don't know where the publishing schedule is right now, but Ciudad Publishing is going to be putting it out.
Excellent. Well, when that does happen, you let me know. We'll send out a link and attach it to this episode of the show. So,
absolutely.
I want to ask you some things unrelated to music, unrelated to your compositions, and just some maybe quick hitter kind of stuff. What is your favorite meal?
My favorite meal is plain old pizza.
Yeah.
I can eat pizza. I say I could eat it every day, but of course it's not good for my stomach or my health. But I just love it.
I do too. Do you have a favorite place that you go?
I do. My favorite place was a place in Temple City, California. It was called Mama Petrillo's. And I've eaten pizza all over the world, and that was my favorite place to get pizza. And they closed down after some 50 plus years of business. Went out, I think like last year, they finally closed their doors. I was so disappointed.
It's funny. Pizza is probably my favorite food. And I tell people all the time that if you brought me just like a regular hand tossed pizza and I ate so much that I was just so full that I thought I was going to burst, and I said, "Oh no, I don't need any more." And then you brought me a thin crust pizza. I would certainly eat more because it's different pizza.
Yes.
I would find room. I too love pizza in all its shapes and forms. Um, who is your favorite rock band? And am I correct that it is Steely Dan? Yes.
Steely Dan, baby. My
And
wife made me this pillow
that
out of a
is
concert T-shirt.
that is your favorite group. Am I right about that?
I think they are the most creative, most quirky, most amazing band that you could ever hear in the pop rock realm. I like to say when the aliens land and they want to hear our best music, as far as pop music goes, you get them a bunch of Steely Dan recordings.
Okay, so if somebody is not a Steely Dan fan, we've got let's say there's some young hipper than I am person listening to this podcast who doesn't know Steely Dan because they're so young and so hip. What would be 3 tracks? You've got to sell people on Steely Dan in 3 songs. What would they be?
Holy cow. Oh my gosh. I don't know if I could do that because every song is so different.
Yeah.
It's like later Beatles output. Every song is unique, different instrumentation, different ideas, different sounds. It's not a 4-instrument band
Yeah.
with a lead singer. It's everything's different with the best players. But okay, if I have to narrow some down, I think Kid Charlemagne has some of the best guitar playing you'll ever hear. Melodic, beautiful, mellifluous. It's just incredible. If you go to the Caves of Altamira, going back to what we were talking about, the caveman paintings, this is a rock song about caveman paintings. and the brass on there is unbelievably good. And then if you want a standard that you can hear on the radio, even, it would be Peg, which just has such a bouncy beat. It's so fun to listen to. Oh, it's just every song is just.
I know you could go on and on.
Mm-hmm.
I know that we were talking at the very beginning about the fact that you read a lot, you enjoy puzzles, and that you might do both of those things and compose more if you had a little more free time. Do you watch TV? Are you a consumer of television media?
Yes, I watch plenty of TV.
Now, in the last year when we were all in our quarantines and stuck at home, were you binging things? Do you binge watch television?
At times I'll binge watch. Last summer, my sons and I made a goal to watch the entire series of Land of the Lost from the 1970s.
Uh-huh.
Marshall, Will, and Holly on a routine expedition. Do you know this? Did you ever see this?
I haven't seen it.
It still holds up. It's about a family, getting transported to the dinosaur days and stuff like this. And we watched it like in 2 days. We saw like 3 seasons. Binge watched that. It was fun.
And anything that you're watching currently or recently that you're a fan of?
Currently, my youngest son and I are making our way through The Simpsons. We're on season 10. Season 10 out of like 30 some seasons.
That's a lot. So, yeah.
And it's a lot of fun to explain to him all the references, all the social references that he wouldn't get otherwise. So that's fun. My wife and I are watching Breaking Bad, which is unbelievable. This show.
Is it your first time?
We wanted to see it for a long time. My first time through it. Yeah.
That's a good one.
And it's incredible. My goodness.
Yeah. Well, speaking of older,
and, I'm trying to get.
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm also making my way through the Cosmos series with Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Yeah, very good.
Every episode I just love. There's so much there to absorb.
Well, I was going to say, speaking of space and older shows, I committed to watching quite a bit of Star Trek recently. This is so I remember when I was young, at some point we would go in and would watch. I remember very vividly watching Star Trek with my dad in my parents' bed. Like all the kids would pile into the bed and watch Star Trek. And this was when The Next Generation was on. So I don't know how old I was at the time. But I'd seen lots and lots of episodes of it, and then had seen a few episodes of Deep Space Nine and a few episodes of Star Trek Voyager. Well, I went and I decided when COVID happened and we were on lockdown, and I had a newborn baby at home and wasn't leaving the house for anything, I had a lot of time to watch TV. And so I started watching Star Trek The Next Generation, and I watched all 7 seasons of that, which is like 250 episodes. And then I watched all 7 seasons of Deep Space Nine, which is 250-ish episodes. Oh. And I'm now on season 5 of Star Trek Voyager, and I'm embarrassed at how much television that I've watched, considering I watched many other things besides that. But it has been a wonderful, a wonderful undertaking, and is if you're into that kind of thing, it's been a great experience to just sit and watch them, in order from start to finish. Mm-hmm. So that's been my biggest television project of the last year and a half or so.
My lengthiest television watching project is Seinfeld, which I've watched with my boys over and over again. My wife says, "Why is the same channel always on in our house?" Yeah. But we make Seinfeld references constantly around my house, my boys and I. We find it hilarious, and I think it's just a brilliant show. It's such a genius show. My wife's watching Friends with my other son, and I say Friends is good and it's entertaining, but Seinfeld was genius. There's a difference there. It's like I Love Lucy. It's like The Simpsons. There's something there that's different than everything else on television.
Yeah, when they change the things that come after them, right? I mean, there's those game changers that when they happen, nothing is the same after that.
Yeah.
So yeah, Dave, thank you so much for taking some time to sit and talk with me. I was so looking forward to this conversation because I do have such a personal connection to some of your music, and with all of the people that I've had an opportunity to talk to, I've performed some of their music and worked on some of their music, but boy, your stuff's got a real special place in my heart. And I hope that people listen to this episode, and I hope they go and check out your music, because it is beautiful and deserves way, way, way more performances. And so hopefully people will check it out.
Thank you, Brad. That means a lot to me. That makes me very happy. I really
for sure. Do you have any of your beverage left somewhere sitting over your shoulder there?
Well, there might be a little bit left in here.
That's a little bit's all you need. We'll say cheers.
Cheers to you.
All right.
Clink.
Thank you for joining us for episode 8 of the Composer Happy Hour, presented by Whatever and Ever Amen. Thank you to my guest, David Montoya. You can visit him on the web at montoyamusic.com to see all of his published and non-published scores, and there's a lot of great stuff there for choirs at just about any level and voicing. I especially recommend checking out his Songs of Fatherhood, which are just absolutely lovely. You can hear the Whatever and Ever Amen performance of this set on Spotify, Apple Music, or on our website, whateverchoir.org. As always, we hope that you will rate and review this podcast wherever you happen to be listening, and consider sharing a link to your favorite episode on your preferred social media platform. Thank you again to our sponsor for the episode, Four Fires Meadery. Their meat is absolutely world-class, and you can have it delivered directly to your door by ordering at www.4fmeadery.com. I do not have an upcoming guest to announce, as I'm working on some scheduling with a few folks. But I'm hoping to bring you a bonus episode in the next couple of weeks, so stay tuned for more information. Thank you all so much for listening. Cheers.